What up? What up? Thanks for tapping into the Sneaker History Podcast. My name's Nick Engvall, and I've spent the last 18 years working in the footwear business, helping companies like Complex, Finish Line, and StockX better connect with their customers. More importantly, helping sneakerheads turn their passion for sneakers into opportunities in the industry. I started Sneaker History nearly 13 years ago as a way for me and my friends in the sneaker world to have a place to talk about the business without the influence of corporate footwear giants telling us what to say or telling us what sneakerheads, I'm using air quotes there, should be featured in our content or invited to be on the show. It's with that spirit we're charging forward thanks to all of you who have recently donated to help cover the costs of keeping the podcast going. If you feel like chipping in, you can find all the info you need in the description or by joining our Discord community, which is linked below. I'm looking forward to taking the show to new levels in the coming months, with more guests from the community, talks with industry professionals, and deeper dives into the sneaker stories that shape this obsession we are all so passionate about. One last thing before we get into the episode, do the right thing and tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a compliment will take you, and we all know how good it feels to be on the receiving end of some appreciation.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move!
LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
Hey, what up? What up? Nick Engvall here, back with the Sneaker History Podcast. I'm super excited about today's episode. I've got two guests with me, and I've been watching from afar and admiring these two gentlemen on a personal level because they're both educators. But I also think that their kind of trajectory and their strategy with their sneaker content also comes off as very educational. And as you know, like that's a huge part of why I love sneakers and why I've been working in this industry for a long time. So I'm excited to introduce you to Aaron and Andy. These guys can introduce themselves a little bit more, but I'll preface this by saying, you know, we kind of connected on Threads. I think we followed each other for quite a while, but like on Threads, there was a little bit of a conversation about just the current state of sneakers and how social media seems to have such a negative tone around it at times. But yet a lot of us, I think the three of us at least, kind of landed on the other side of that, where it's like there's a lot of great things happening in sneakers. You just got to kind of look around for it. So I guess Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Awesome. Appreciate you, Nick. So I'm Aaron, or Front Page Aaron. I'm originally from New York, but I'm out in Vegas now, and been into sneakers my whole life. Like I put on my bio, I blame my mom. Ever since I was a little kid, she'd buy me everything, kind of like our kids right now, right? They're gonna grow up and have way more shoes than they should, but that was my mom, and so I've just loved it ever since I was a little kid, and that's kind of why I'm still here collecting sneakers.
Nice. How about you, Andy?
So I'm Andy, Andy Dutton on social media, go by AD Sneaks. Similar to Aaron, I've been into sneakers since I was a kid, but more so admiring from afar as a kid because my parents didn't want to spend money on the sneakers, and we'd get those East Bay magazines in the mail, and I'd just be drooling over stuff, cutting things out, putting it in my school binder, looking at, I was always paying attention to what people had on their feet on the basketball court. I played basketball growing up, so that was my first introduction to sneakers. And, ever since then, there's always been that fascination. And anytime, like, something comes in, it's just that, like, it's that feeling that I would get as a kid. It's like, man, I see that picture, but now I got it. And it's just, there's that feeling, hard to describe unless you've been there, like you guys have been there. But, yeah, happy to be here, Nick. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, of course. I 100% relate to that. Like I've probably told this too many times to our podcast listeners, but I have three siblings, two brothers and a sister. And growing up in the house, we always had, basically 5 East Bay subscriptions for, like, my mom had hers, like the kids all had theirs, but, mom's was kind of the default stays in the bathroom or stays in the living room. And like everybody else, cause we would be fighting over what was actually circled in those magazines, or like you would go and like the shoe that you wanted to cut out and put in your binder at school was gone already. So can totally relate. And the East Bay thing's really kind of near and dear to my heart, because I don't know if you guys know this, but I was actually able to like build that East Bay blog when it started. Like that was my responsibility when I worked for Soul Collector magazine.
Wow.
So, it was kind of the first like, wow, this is like sneaker content is like the gateway drug to all things sports and business and all this stuff for me. So it's always cool to hear people that have similar experiences. And, like I think East Bay is one of those things that even though like it probably is a little bit more nostalgic on the like older side, going back into the 90s, early 90s, it seems like even generationally, there's this like common connection through like, where people can remember like the first time they saw KD or a LeBron cover issue from, like 2009 or 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear that.
One fun fact, I mean, this is like a little sneak peek. I've been shooting a little bit. I haven't been posting as much, but I just filmed a video called about Soul Collector, and it's basically like asking like what happened to Soul Collector and going through some of the collabs that I mean, like so many, the Gary Paytons, there's so many Soul Collector shoes that the LV Cowboys, the Dunks, right, like out here in Vegas. But man, I think a lot of people don't realize before Complex bought it, like how like important Soul Collector was to sneakers,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think I look back fondly at that time, like I got to work on the magazine before it went away and, was a part of launching a few of the collab shoes. And, like it was such an important part for the community of people that are passionate about sneakers. But it was before, social media had us have these little, this is not the right word, but like the little cliques and like it's like we all collectively have our own unique audiences, but there's so much overlap. And then at the same time, if you put all the people in the room that follow all of us, 99% of them are going to get along and become best friends because it's like, I obsess over this stuff too, But on the internet, we have, at this point with social media, we have so many of these little weird, like people just read into things too much, or somebody's just mad and they're posting some nonsense on somebody's comments. And, but Soul Collector, I wonder that too. I'm going to be looking forward to your video. Like I was a part of that. I actually went to Complex from Soul Collector, and then Complex ended up buying Soul Collector like within a year of me moving to New York and working for Complex. So it was such a bittersweet situation because it was like, I could kind of see that, Soul Collector couldn't live the life that it had, in that time. And, Complex has been through so many acquisitions, and we've all seen all of our favorite streetwear. I mean, I'm wearing a Stussy shirt, or a Huff sushi shirt. And it's like all these companies have been bought and sold so many times that like they lose a lot of their like personal connections, but I think like we all kind of remember the best of the things to pass along to the next generation, which again, that's why I wanted to talk to you guys. Cause I also want to talk to you both at the same time, because I think you both have very different approaches to the way you do content. And I kind of wanted to hear how you think about that. Aaron, you obviously are doing a lot of the talking head things and asking important questions. And Andy, you're like next level with your photography and like the amount of effort that I know you put into that. Working in a magazine world years ago, like I know how much you have to do that, and I'm like, man, you're doing this so regularly, and to know that you're teaching and wearing a different pair every day and all these things that you do, and I'm just like, I'm lucky if I get the podcast out at the same time every week, So why don't you guys tell a little bit about how you got into like creating sneaker content?
I'll go, Aaron. So me, like content, like for me, I mean, I always consume sneaker stuff from afar because, like, when you're in sneakers, they're checking socials, Twitter, Instagram for things when it comes to sneakers. And then it was during COVID, 2020, we're all at home. I've always loved photography. And like, I still love doing like landscape photography. Live in Utah. So there's, you can go anywhere.
Great
here.
place
There's
for that.
something beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
And so how I learned how to use my camera and just going out hiking with my family and my friends and stuff, and just taking pictures of all the places we would go. And during COVID, couldn't meet up with anybody. And, you know, we have our family and stuff. And it's like, man, I want to take pictures. I love that process of taking pictures. So it's like, well, people take pictures of their shoes and all this stuff thrown on Instagram. And it's like, I'm going to start taking pictures, but I'm going to use my camera and not just my phone. I'm going to try to like just get, you know, figure things out with that. And it's just kind of evolved from that, just merging my love for photography and my love for sneakers together. And it's still like, I don't know, my happy place, and my wife thinks it's weird sometimes. Like I go in my basement with all my shoes, and I got my studio over here with all my setup. But that's like, I don't watch a lot of like TV. I don't watch a lot of movies to unwind or play video games or anything to unwind. It's all like, I need to go like, I want to take some pictures, like go take some pictures of some shoes, maybe try some different lighting technique or different position stuff. That kind of stuff's just fun for me. So I just try to share what I enjoy doing and just share it with other people.
Dope. Yeah, Andy's the man. Like I wish I had his patience, and like it really does take dedication to do it, right? Like I can never create the way he does, because man, it's, you know, it takes so much time and effort, and just it has to be intentional with every detail, right? Like I half the time don't even lace the sneakers I take photos of. So like Andy's the man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
So I was kind of similar story to Andy, except I can't take the credit for it. My cousin Brian called me one day during the pandemic and was like, bro, do you watch Full Size Run? And so I would watch Full Size Run, and I was like, yeah. He's like, what if we did something like that? And so I was like, all right, bet. So then it was just kind of like, all right, how do we get this together? We need a third person. And so we hit up our friend, and it was really kind of his doing that I did a lot of like the behind the scenes technical stuff, but it was really him that got us doing kind of like a show, and we wanted to make it a little different. Andy was actually a guest on the show a couple of years ago, and we did a little like fun trivia game and stuff like that. And so that was kind of what got me into space. And then you kind of realize as you're doing social media, right, that like you have to post consistently, and you have to be creative, right? And so we're doing one podcast a week, so we're clipping, you know, a bunch of videos, but then we're like, oh man, we should throw up a graphic, or we should throw up sneaker pictures, right? And so I think that's kind of what got me into it. And then my cousin has moved on to other things, and my friends moved on to other things, but I've just enjoyed it. And I think I don't put pressure on myself to consistently create, which maybe is a downfall of my page, but I just like this. I just like sneakers. And so part of me just feels like doing a small part in conserving kind of the history or like the stories of sneakers, which really matter to me.
Yeah. Well, I second Andy's thoughts on not forcing it. I think one of the posts that stands out from you to me was when you posted your child like in maybe like 2023 or something, and you were like, you said something that it was beautiful, but it was also like you said something about like batch creating and like and just like having that balance, because I think, you know, I tend to do like a ton of things, and you know, I'm always trying things and like letting it fall off, and then I'll be distracted and I'll be like, oh, I got a new thing over here, I got a new thing over there. And I think, you know, I envy that you have that, you know, like I feel like I almost maybe started too early in this and feel that pressure even more, even if I don't succumb to it as much as, you know, maybe I used to. But it is so important to be able to like, you know, take a break from it and prioritize yourself and your family and stuff. And I think that shines through in like what you guys do too, I think, in a sense that, you know, a lot of what we watch and consume from a, you know, Complex is kind of the top of the top when it comes to sneaker content, just because there's not too many big companies consistently producing that content, or original content, I should say. And I think that, you know, even working at Complex back a decade plus ago, you know, we were cranking out, you know, the list that they've been doing recently, doing the best dunks or the best whatevers and
best collaborators.
Yeah. And, you know, like those are things that we were doing like multiple of those a week back in 2012 or whatever, when it was that I was there. And, you know, managing that team of people was just such a it was challenging because, you know, you get so excited about it, and that's what makes it hard to stop. You know, it's like, it's really easy when it's like, if I was writing about something I didn't care about, or putting together these, like, you know, roundtables with people that I just had no interest in actually having a relationship with. But when you care about it, it's like, how do you turn that off, you know? And I think that's like such an admirable thing. So definitely don't sell yourself short on that one.
Yeah, I'm like Andy though. Like this is my space, like my office and stuff. And I tell my wife the same things. Like if I'm feeling overwhelmed with work or anything else, like I'm like, I need to go shoot some content or like take pictures of shoes, you know.
Yeah.
And it really is therapeutic.
Yeah,
It is. You're just alone with the stuff that you enjoy doing. And it's just like, I mean, people have their weird things, maybe not even weird, but just things that they like to do to unwind. And, you know, this is what we like to do to unwind. So, yeah, it's being consistent. Like I remember early on when I first started, like initially I started because like some of my friends are like, oh, you like shoes? Like you should like make a new Instagram page and like post your shoes so we can see what you got. So my initial goal was to just like start. And then once I got to the end of my collection, I was like, all right, you know, we're cool. We're done. But then like I started to enjoy it more, like taking pictures. And like it first started with just like the shoe, and then it started with me like wearing the shoe, and I never showed anything that I was wearing with. It's like, oh, now I got to get my socks in coordination with my shoe and make that look good. And I was just having fun, like just trying to like compose things and then just show off my sneakers and stuff like that. And then like once it got a little bit of traction, then I felt like you were saying, like that pressure, like, oh, I need to keep doing this, I need to keep doing this. And then when I felt that pressure, I wasn't having fun anymore.
Yeah.
It was just like, now this feels like a chore to like do the photo stuff. And then I was like, because I was doing it like back then, it was just like I would shoot, I would edit, I would post all in the same day, that same content. And I would do that every day. And I was just like, man, I got to do something else. Like I'm going to burn out on this. So I started to step back a little bit and just like, only when I wanted to post stuff or like shoot stuff, I would shoot it. And then like while I'm in that mood, I'll grab another pair and we'll shoot that one, and then grab another pair. So I would just batch it out while I'm in the mood to do that. And then like maybe the next day comes around and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just take a break and, you know, spend some more time with the kids. And so, I mean, trying to do it. And I preach this, like creating for the algorithm or creating for metrics or insights or, you know, all this stuff. That's not fun. Like we create because we want to connect with people. We want to share with people, you know, the same passion that we have over sneakers. So like that's the true meaning behind it. And, you know, just being able to connect with like you guys. I mean, that's how I met Aaron. And, you know, like we text here and there, and we DM here and there about teaching and life and stuff. And, you know, that wouldn't have come about if it wasn't for social media and connecting. Like that's the best part of all of this is just connecting.
100%. Yeah. Like my kind of go-to saying when it comes to sneakers is like it's actually not all about the shoes. I know we were taught that as kids, but it's actually all about the people. You know, like you don't really like I couldn't tell you the last time I met up with a friend and was like actively looking at their feet. It's more like at first you're like, yeah, that's what you connect on. You're like, showing off the thing, and then like you're saying, it's like months, years down the road, it's like, well, no, we're friends beyond that. We're talking about life stuff, teaching kids all the things. So, but yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think the other thing, like around your content and like kind of, I think probably, you know, like one of the things that I admire about what you do on the teaching side was like your daily sneaker posts, right? Mm-hmm. I've tried to do that probably 5 different times in my life and just go through a full year. 'Cause I unfortunately for many years have not had self-control and just bought way too many shoes and have like a storage unit of shoes. And, you know, it's not admirable. It's one of those things where I'm like, just don't do what I did and you'll be fine if you're into sneakers. But it's also been like an incredible like journey for me to be able to meet all the people that I've met. And I have so many friends that like, because one of us was like, oh, I like those, you know, and next thing you know, you're like, you know, you're taking the families out to eat together and all this stuff. So, but your daily sneaker post for the students, I think, is really interesting because as somebody who, again, like you were saying, didn't really grow up having that, you know, I connected to one of my like mentors who was a teacher for me both in 5th and 6th grade, and he got me into hats. So I've collected hats since I was a 5th grader, basically. And, he actually kind of got me into sports a little bit heavier. I got into basketball more. I got more into like the nuances of like baseball. I'm a big baseball fan anyway. My family is big baseball fans, or are big baseball fans, but he kind of like pushed me to look at it in a different way. And I think that that's so cool for you to be able to do that. And like, I would imagine that like, even just talking about sneakers to your students just completely breaks down barriers that most kids have with their teachers.
Yeah, I mean it's initially from like the get out, like first day comes in, like I mean now I guess I've built up a little bit of a reputation at my school, so kids like know that I like sneakers, so they'll come in anyway. But like when I started being more conscious about wearing stuff to school that I wanted to, kids, like you'd see the kids like look at your feet and then they'd be like, oh, and then like the next day it'd be like they'd turn into a compliment or a comment, and then the next day after that you're just like going back and forth with the kid, and it's fun, just because like anything, and I mean even outside of sneakers, just in education in general, like if the kids can see that their teacher is like a real person, that they have interests outside of what they're trying to teach their kids, like it's instant buy-in. And because I remember as a kid growing up, those were the teachers that I liked, the ones that had like, some personality, would talk about their lives.
Yeah.
Like they want to get to know you as a person, not just as a teacher and as a student. And so there's that connection piece there. And yeah, I mean, it's been fun, and with wearing shoes to school and stuff, and then trying to get kids always showing me like they got them screens on sneakers. And sometimes I'm happy for them, sometimes I'm not, because if I don't hit and they do, like
it's like, bro, who's paying for that? Like you just hit.
I know that's not your credit card. Like, you steal your mom's card and set up that account. Like, what'd you do, buddy?
Well, now it's cool because it's more than just like the PE teachers that have sneakers at school, right?
Facts.
Like I think growing up, it was always like the PE teachers or the basketball coaches that always had, and you came to expect it, right? And then their stereotypical teacher had on like, the dad shoes and whatnot. And so now it's cool that more and more people are into them, or at least teachers, right? There's a huge community of educators that are showcasing their sneakers. And I think like what Andy said is true, man. It helps the kids relate, or like, it's so popular now, right? It's a weird thing. Like I think when we were like back in the day, like it was so niche. Like, like if you ask normal people like what an East Bay magazine is, right? Like they probably won't tell you, won't be able to tell you. Or you talk about Nice Kicks or So Collector, right? Like things that we know and we nerded out about. But now it's like every kid knows about it, right? Like even kids not into sneakers are buying Dunks and Jordan 1s to go to school in, and they just know that that's like the in shoe, right? And or like Air Forces. And so it's kind of a weird dynamic, because I'm sure you see it, Andy, but like I'll see, like, we have free shoe day. My school is pretty strict about the uniform, but they'll have like free shoe day, and everyone has on like a pair of 4s or like a pair of 1s. I'm like, I didn't even know you like shoes, and a lot of times they don't, but they know that that's the cool thing to wear now,
Exactly. Yeah, it's so different because like you were saying, as a kid growing up, like, I got into sneakers because of basketball, and so like after basketball season was over, I was always like super hyped to wear like my basketball shoes, like not on the court anymore, and wear around the hallways and do all that stuff. But like the only people that really seemed to like want to do that were the guys that I played basketball with, or like any of the kids that were like into sports. There wasn't like this like, oh, everybody's getting like, I mean, in my day it was and one Tai Chi's. That was like the business. And so those and like the Iverson 4s, the Answer 4s. But yeah, like I remember like nobody would just buy those shoes to wear those shoes. You would buy those shoes to play basketball in those shoes. And then after basketball's over, your friends, like, you'd beat them up, you'd mow the lawn in them, but you had those shoes and you got to wear them off the court. And that was just something that was like, I felt like a little bit more tight knit back then. And then now, like, everyone does it. I mean, social media probably helps with that, but I think it's cool because even if kids like initially are just getting the shoe because it's the popular shoe, they might see you wear that popular shoe but a different colorway, and they're like, oh, what colorway is that? And then you just like, and you can like help these kids like, no, it's like, yeah, sneakers are cool now, but like there's a lot to this. Like we're gonna
Yeah.
have a sit down and talk about this for a little bit.
What percentage of kids do you guys think are like aware? Like I don't want to say like dedicated to it, but like aware of it at this point.
I would say, I mean, the kids that I teach, I would say a very small percentage are like actually aware of it, right? Like can sit there and talk colorways with you. Maybe like a tenth of them, right? Like I think most of them can name, like the popular silhouettes, like the Jordan 3, the Jordan 1, the Jordan 4. But like I'll sit there and try to talk to them. Like I wore like some old Forces, right? And they're like, "What are those, Mr. Diaz?" Right? And they're patent leather, and so I'm like, "All right, let me talk to you. Go look on StockX, like type in this shoe, right?" Like, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, they're going." Or like, I wore Do the Right Thing 3s to school one day, and the kids were like, "What are those? I've never seen those before," And I'm like, "What?" So then they go to StockX and they see they're selling for a lot. Like, "Oh, tell us about them," But I think they know the popular silhouettes, but it's also, I think, because of social media and they move on with trends so fast that like now the Samba's in, right? Like now, like at the end of last year, half of the kids had Sambas on, right? Or like, I don't know if now like the chunky old school Vans are in too, So like they just move on so quickly that for us, like we're nostalgic about it, right? Like like you've heard Andy talk about the Jordan 2 or the Laney 5s, right? And going back and getting them and the Jordan 2s that he played in growing up. And so for us, it's a nostalgia thing. For them, it's like a trendy thing, right? Like whatever. I'm curious to see what shoe is in for them this year, but it was like the Sambas and at the end of the year and the chunky Vans. And now a lot of them are like Doc Martens and those like type of shoes too. Like they're getting kind of trendy. So I think whatever is in. Like they don't. And then I don't know, Andy, let me know if you think this is like, but like stuff that's becoming popular for us too in the sneaker space. Like for example, the AE1s, I don't think are necessarily translating to the kids, right? Like I think
agree.
They're like going after still whatever like TikTok or like those trends are following, whereas like we're talking about the AE1 as like a sneaker of the year, right? But for them, I don't think that it's translated well to like the younger audience, but I don't know.
No, I agree, because like I thought about that the other day too, because I was talking with one of my friends about that, and we were saying that like, like you were saying, kids follow trends and kids like they want to wear what's fashionable. Like, but when we grew up, we wanted to wear what our favorite athletes wore. Because that was fashionable. So like I think the older people in the sneaker game like appreciate the AE1 for like that it's a cool performance shoe, that Ant's balling out. He's fun to watch. Their marketing's been stellar. And then like it's a dope looking shoe on court and off court. Like I feel like it brings like it back to when like like I mentioned the Tai Chis and like the Answer 4s. Like I wanted to play basketball in those, but I also wanted to wear those to school. So it's like there's an athlete tied to the shoe and then the shoe like to the consumer, and you don't see that as much. I mean, there's people who want like KDs and like LeBrons and Currys and stuff like that, and also get a couple of kids that like I see a lot of kids wearing Currys because they love Steph Curry. It's not because they're into shoes; it's because they love Steph Curry. So it's just it's an interesting thing, and I mean I completely agree with you, Aaron. Like kids don't connect the sports aspect of sneakers. It's just it's the lifestyle and the fashion side of it, and then they move on. Like last year, like beginning of the year at my school, it was just like GR Dunks, and then like this wave of like New Balance 550s came in, and then like the New Balance 550s like died really quick, and then it was Sambas like it's just like it just goes, and then we'll see what happens this year.
It's so interesting.
It's crazy
because I obviously not having like the daily connection to like the younger generation, right? Like I see it at the gym. So we have basically like a community rec center is like our kind of like our gym here. And, we've got like 4 basketball courts in there. And like, I would say like, 50% of the time, one of those courts is like really young kids running, and then like the rest of it, like you can kind of see the age progression, and then like, but the last couple of weeks, there's been 3 kids wearing AE1s, And I'm like,
Yes.
okay, that's kind of crazy because I haven't seen it. So I see kids in the Kyries. We're close to the Bay Area, so we see a ton of Currys, but I also wondered about that. I was actually going to ask you guys about that. So I'm glad you brought it up because I'm like, on the other side, in my work, I was recently laid off, but like in my work side of life with sneakers, it's the same thing that you guys are talking about, right? Like the New Balance 550 had this like blip on the radar, peak and gone. And then like, still kind of like Panda Dunks are just like strolling at the bottom of everybody's list. And then like Sambas, just like skyrocketed where it was like you couldn't keep them on the shelves no matter who you were. And then the resale side of it, it's like the resellers go and buy it up. So it's like all in your face everywhere when that happens because now everybody that goes to a cool, store in LA or New York or whatever, a Flight Club or whatever, then they see that this is the shoe of the moment. So like it almost like reiterates what they're seeing on TikTok, what they're seeing at school, and then they go and see it and it's like, oh, these are the cool, like the cool kids on the store side seem to like just like hammer that home. So I feel like that Samba trend almost had like this trifecta of like, all these like trends coming together. But I was really surprised being at the gym and seeing these kids playing in the AE1s, and it's like the first colorway, the all-star colorway, and then one of the kids had like I think it's the Georgia Peach colorway. It's like the all peach, right? But it's surprising because, I mean, I would say that like this is not accurate, but I think like in my mind, it's almost 50-50 with like Kyrie and Curry stuff with like I'm guessing these kids are like 15 and under, right? They're fairly young, like get to go to the Y or whatever and play, but like they're not out there like buying their own shoes yet. So to me, that actually makes me wonder because I agree with what you said about the AE1, and on top of that, his personality, right? He has he's leaned into it so much where, I think the older, not to categorize you guys in the older generation with me, but like, we're here and like the older generation, we were so lucky to have all these personalities, like that's one thing that kind of has been lost on this new, and I look at somebody like KD and I think like he is one of those guys that has a personality that could easily sell more shoes, but then he kind of shies away from it. And then he kind of does this like too cool to play the games and that kind of thing. And where Anthony Edwards has just been like, look, I'm here. I'm going to show you my shoe every time I do something. I'm going to rub it in your face if I dunk on you. Like, it's kind of like all of the things that we wished we had in like these athletes before combined into one athlete again, where, and we get to see it on social media where like we didn't get that with Jordan or Iverson. Thankfully, like Iverson's my favorite player of all time. But like if Twitter or Instagram existed in the 90s, both those guys would have lost everything that they've ever done.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
So,
they would have been done. They would have been canceled so quick.
Yeah, a lot of the dominant personalities in the league though are like very laid back like that though, right? Like I think as this league has become almost more skilled and less like, like you almost had to play with a chip on your shoulder back in the day because everyone was aggressive. It was like, I think in a lot of ways, I was having this conversation with a friend, but like the league was kind of like a lot of these kids like meal tickets, right? Like a lot of people that came up. Now you're seeing like, not that it's not the majority of them anymore, but now you have like the Bronnies and a lot of these kids that are growing up that their dads play in the NBA or play G League, and they grew up a little nicer. They went to prep schools, right? Like and so I feel like we're seeing a league that's a lot more skilled, but at the same time, like, like Jason Tatum, right? It's like very mellow guy, right? But he's one of the faces of the league. He just won a chip, but like it's not a Kevin Garnett winning the chip moment, right? Where like Kevin Garnett was a dog and like Jason Tatum's super good, but like we just don't have those personalities anymore. And I think Bron's my favorite player of all time, and I think partly is due to him. Like he's never been that like vocal, and he's the face of the league for so long, right? And so I think a lot of the other players kind of assimilated to that, where it's now you have Anthony Edwards who's like, bro, I don't care who you are, I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna go at you, and then it sells the shoe, right? Because people, like, I think that's why people love Kobe's now, right? Like they've kind of made this resurgence, but all you hear is about that Mamba mentality and all these things. So yeah, we don't have the personalities like we had, like Iverson and obviously Jordan and Kobe and Shaq, right? Like all these guys were big personalities in the league, and now it's just, everyone's kind of mellowed. Like even Curry, right? He's as big of a star as he is. Curry's like just
so
a
chill.
Yeah, just chill, right? Like, so it's hard to, it's just the league has changed in that way.
Yeah,
and I think too, as far as like, the signature sneaker stuff, and how that relates to that is like early on, like with the Shaqs, with the Charles Barkleys, with the Iversons, and the Jordans, there was like a select few people that had their shoe. And now it seems like, and maybe it's just so like overwhelmingly like Nike Jordan that it's like, man, I swear, like, and not a knock on them, but I swear like the latest like PG and Giannis and LeBron and all their shoes, they tend to look really similar, and it's like there's not a ton to like differentiate between some of those. And then I think where Ant comes in, it's like Adidas. We know some of the Adidas athletes. You got Donovan Mitchell and Dame. They're big ones, and James Harden. But then like I felt like the Harden line, like people liked it, but it was just like, okay, another Harden, like they're used to it. But then like Ant came in with like that shoe, and then just what he's doing, and like you guys said, the personality, like it was just perfect storm, I think, for that shoe. Just contrast the stuff that's going on with like Jordan, Nike, contrast like the personalities that are going on in the league, and then just like it's been cool to watch.
Yeah, totally. So I think that you brought up something that's interesting that I think will kind of lead us into another part of the conversation I wanted to have. The Nike designs being so similar, or it feels like we don't have the kind of like pinnacle moments for any of these athletes anymore, right? Like you don't have a moment where PG does this incredible thing or has this incredible commercial the way we used to get that for everybody. Like you're talking about like Charles Barkley, right? And like Nike leaned into his, kind of bad guy bully, attitude. And I think that, at least from my perspective, the lack of embracing the personalities and like maybe even taking a little bit more risk, both in the players that you sign and the design cues that go into their footwear, seems like that is somehow tied into the perception of like sneakers are dead, or it's a terrible time for sneakers. Even though like all the people, and I'm generalizing, but most of the people that are saying that on the internet are very much talking about some specific shoes, right? They're talking about Jordan 1 retros. They're talking about dunks, and like, they're not really the consumer that has, I've seen a lot of the stuff that you guys post, and I've seen the stuff behind you in your videos and on your socials. And like, there's a crazy amount of diversity there. And I think that's like my approach to sneakers. Once I started working in this, I remember specifically, like, I basically was like, okay, if I'm actually going to put my name on these things, like back in the day, it was like I used my AOL login for all my, or my screen name for all my like social handles. And then it was like, wait, this is going to be me out here talking about this. So everything changed to my Nick Engvall at everything. It was just like, I'm going to take this seriously. But I basically like tried to buy and wear as many brands as I could, because I wanted people to know that if I was going to write something or say something about a shoe, that it wasn't just about that one shoe. It was about 100 other shoes that I had in my hand and looked at and worn and felt. And like, I wasn't just saying it because, this one costs $50 and this one costs $200. And I think we've gotten to a point where that seems to be kind of missing in the space in a lot of ways. Like the people that get to, and I don't have like, I'm not trying to point out people, but I'm just speaking in generalities about like just the tone around sneakers. And maybe this is just because Twitter has kind of become a little bit more negative in the past like year or two, and it was such a huge place for sneakers for so long. But it feels like people complain about, the sneaker game or whatever it is in whatever way they want to. Like you don't even really need to get specific about it. But it seems like that lack of, and maybe it's on Nike, as they're usually the leader and the pinnacle, brand within the whole industry to like kind of create that energy and that aspirational content and all of that stuff. But it also seems like on the other side, their retro product has been lackluster and they've saturated the market with it. So like it's not like we're just in this weird spot. So like, I guess I'll just ask you guys, like, how do you feel about where we are and how do you think we got here all of a sudden? Because it doesn't feel like, for us being in it, it doesn't feel like it's an all of a sudden thing. But I think like there's been like a tipping point in like the percentage of people that are just like, meh, whatever. It's kind of old news at this point.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think for me, I think the tipping point was when we started to see like, the economy struggle a little bit, like everything's going up in prices, gas, food, housing, living costs, everything's going up. So people got to reprioritize, what's important to them. And then, we had the COVID boom, everyone getting their stimulus money. And, I'm not going to lie, I used some on some sneakers too. But like, people had some money to spend. And then like all of a sudden that habit of spending goes down. So I think like sneakers, one of those, really niche commodities is going to take a hit because of that as well. And so I think that's where you see like reselling declined because people aren't going to, purchase things for retail. They're definitely not going to be purchasing things for resale during that time. And then, and I think when that goes down, you see all these people struggling and people are like, oh yeah, sneakers are dead. And it's not that they're dead. It's just that they're like, interest levels have changed with people that were, kind of like scratching into sneakers or just barely getting into sneakers. And then, things happen and then they dip. But I mean, people who've been into sneakers and love sneakers, like, I mean, Aaron can attest, like right now is a great time. I'm happy because you can get some awesome stuff for under retail, or even stuff that like you may have missed on that, 2 years ago would have been reselling for like triple the price. It's maybe $50-$60 above retail. And so and I'm loving it. And I think with that too, the diversity of brands that are starting to, become more relevant. New Balance, I feel like has kind of always been there with like what Kith and, Ronnie Feig has done and stuff like that. But then you're, him with them and Asics, but now you're seeing like Saucony coming up with J-Tips and, just some of these newer collaborations that we're seeing just to kind of give some fresh ideas into the sneaker space that has just been kind of, oversaturated with the GRs from Nike, or oversaturated with like, Travis Scott Jordan 1 lows, all these things that we've seen. New ideas are coming in. It's refreshing, and I think people are gravitating towards that.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off that. I have like a couple ideas that maybe are not super accurate, but I just kind of, as I've thought about that. But the big one is like Nike didn't have to innovate for so long, right? Like for a long time, they really had no true competitor. Like you could say Yeezy when he went to Adidas was like a huge threat to their market share, but for a long period of time, Nike was the sneaker market. And that's not to say that they aren't, right? Like Nike's still the big brother brand, but like the big brother brand, but like what AD said, like now you see these companies that are kind of taking a little bit of Nike's blueprint and are becoming more of a marketing company, right? Like now you're seeing them run more campaigns. You're seeing them tap into more grassroots efforts, right? They're tapping into designers and people that have real ties to communities that can get people behind them. And Nike's kind of stepped away from that, right? Like they had Virgil in like the mid 2010s, which is kind of like their answer to Yeezy and like but he came from the Yeezy tree too, right? And so that was their way. And like Don C and all these guys that had real ties to a community and had built successful brands. Whereas like now they kind of, I think, and this is my personal opinion, I don't know anyone at Nike personally, but like I think they got too comfortable. I think they got used to that big boom of people who were interested in Nike Dunks, and they were putting out some dope projects like 2021, 2022 Nike, especially Nike Dunks were just incredible. But then you start relying on that and you get away from what made you successful, right? Which is like, when's the last time you see Nike do a grassroots event, right? Or like, like seating people in the community. Like a lot of what made them successful, they've gotten away from. And other brands have started to do it, right? Like you look at what Saucony's doing, you look at New Balance, especially when they brought on Joe Freshgoods and Salehi and all these people that gave them credibility. And then all of a sudden they were able to sell their GR product as well, right? Like all of a sudden, you know, Salehi does a 2002R and everyone now wants a 2002R, right? Like they always, like they tapped into what Nike did so well in the past. And so that's my opinion. I think they got too comfortable, and then other brands started taking that blueprint and saying, all right, if we want to have a space, then we need to also, we need to also make sure that we're doing what Nike was doing at some point.
I don't know if we lost him.
I also think
that I was waiting for that
waiting for it to catch up.
Other brands have just put more or made more intentional product. And so I think they're not saturating the market like Nike did and tried to do. And so they're giving you less frequent, so it kind of ups the demand, right? Supply and demand. Like if you're seeing a Nike collaboration every 2 weeks, it's not going to mean as much as when you have, you know, a Joy Freshgoods collaborations like twice a year or 3 times a year. And so they kind of, I think, need to slow down and reevaluate where their marketing's at, like where their efforts are going, and they'll be fine. Nike will always be fine.
Yeah,
they have the archive too, right? Which is like what other brands can't tap into, right? Like Nike can tap into 80s and 90s footwear, especially right now, and you know, give it a fresh design, and they'll be fine. But I think other brands are just doing it the right way.
Now, do you guys think that I 100% agree with what you said? I think that you know, the community aspect of it, you know, as we were talking about Soul Collector, right? Like, you know, we were so lucky to have started to like build the community around Soul Collector and the forums and all of that. You know, Nike Talk is always going to be a thing, you know, where it's just like there's a core audience there that like really cares about this stuff. And, you know, that feels like that, to your point, kind of, it's almost like Nike sucked in all of that energy through their collaborations for so many years. And then you have other people doing collaborations, but they never, you know, not never, but like it was 1 or 2 a year that might hit from a collaborator versus like everything that Nike did with some of these collaborators was just, you know, important, sold out, and like created the demand and the hype around everything that they do. For someone like Salehi, right? You know, I agree with like the, you know, like he somehow brought like a shoe that, you know, most people don't have any idea about that shoe until he brings it back out of the New Balance archive. And it's perfect for the trend, the overall trend of like this kind of Y2K style runners, the more metallic finishes on the shoes. Like it fits what we would all look at and say, oh, that's a great trend to get a shoe in there. But do you guys see those types of shoes on the feet of your students ever? Like, because I have a real like curiosity about like the next wave for Nike and for these brands, because it doesn't seem like there's like a connection point between like generations right now that would keep people even interested. I'm not like, for me, I care about like sneakers as a whole, but like specifically with Nike, you know, I think we're all big fans of what they've done because you know, they are responsible for most of us getting interested in this, or at least paying attention to it, even if we like latched on to another brand or story or player. But right now it seems like what's the nostalgia for, you know, the 12 to 13-year-old kids in 10 years and what happens? You know, is it going to be a New Balance 2002R, or is it going to be like an AE1, you know?
Yeah, it'll be some, they'll reminisce with their friends about, you know, when Obsidian Jordan 1s were all over TikTok. That's their nostalgia, right?
Yeah, it's
like, it's different. It's just so different. And, you know, to answer your question though about the classroom, like, I haven't seen anybody wear any like collaboration outside of anything Nike or Jordan has done. Like,
Interesting.
There's no kids that are rocking. I mean, there's 550s. Like kids were wearing 550s, but the runner style New Balances, there is no one rocking those in my school.
Yeah, same. I didn't see any kids with them. I don't know if you guys remember the reel I did where I was like I got eaten alive in the comments because I was like Nike, like nostalgia isn't selling anymore, right? Like, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm 65 and I'm buying Jordans forever. And I'm like, bro, like you're missing the point. That my question isn't like
It's selling to us still.
Yeah, it's selling to us still, but like there is nothing, other than it's all hype, right? Like these kids relate to hype. And so unless you continue, and that's why I think they say sneakers are dead, right? Like I hear that a lot from the students, like, oh, sneakers are kind of dead, like because there isn't this like hype around this big collaboration, right? I think that's why Travis kind of still holds some like weight, and the kids will always be tied to Travis because they kind of grew up on him and Fortnite and all these things, right? And so, but there is no real like Nike sneaker that's tying them. Like if Jordan went away, like Nike, I don't know if they would hold on to a lot of these kids, right? Like it would be, they're not wearing Air Forces, right? Like they're not wearing dunks as much anymore, right? Like
no
that
Air
dunk
Maxes,
wave.
like
Yeah, no Air
Maxes.
Maxes. Yeah, like even though we think they're fire, right? Like I'd wear Air Max ones every day, but like the kids don't. Like their connection was to the hype, right? Was to the trend, and so I'm curious to see like what Nike does to respond to that in 5-10 years when these kids are like the adults with actual buying power, and not using mom and dad's money. Like, are they even gonna care about sneakers anymore, right? Like, are they in that generation where it's like, hey, I'm gonna like I'll buy something to wear, but I'm not gonna like right? Like we've mass consumed sneakers, right? Because we've seen these ups and flows and we've been able to buy at low prices and hold on to stuff. Sorry, my alarm went off. But like we've been able to hold on to stuff and buy at low prices and keep it because we care enough. But like I don't know what they do next. I'm curious to see how long these new trends last, right? Like how long is the Samba going to be in, right, before it goes back into the shadow realm or back to Europe, right? Like how long, like the 550 basically is dead, right? Like I don't see any.
Yeah, I'm not
like
seeing those.
I'm not seeing those anymore either. So like it's curious. It's always a guessing game of like what's next, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because like we talked about athletes, but I think even like, if you're talking about more recently in the sneaker world, like you kind of have these like, we wouldn't have referred to them as influencers, but like the guys that are running an undefeated concepts, they're absolutely influencing all the people in the sneaker world because they're working with Nike to help them pick the shoe that comes out. Supreme has always done that, brought like random shoes out, even made their own shoes at times. But it's almost as if there isn't really like a consistent, even like with like the, the come up of like streamers and Twitch, there isn't a consistent connection to any of these people the way, like if you think of, Virgil or like you said, Don C or these guys that like really like connected like culture to like the big corporation. It feels like there's nobody standing in the middle right now. It feels like there's nobody reaching across and saying like, who's going to come do all this cool stuff that you can do when you have access to like the Nike catalog, or whatever that is. And I wonder how that will all play out. Cause it feels a little, I don't want to say depressing. Like I'm going to be excited because it's just going to be more and more discounted shoes. But I also like want to have my friends being able to have jobs and be secure and like working in the footwear industry too. So, but I think that, those connectors are missing, like I would love to see, like I think, guys like Salehi and Joe Fresh Goods, like they do that in a very like small niche way, but it's like, how does, a random kid in Utah or Vegas or, like here, in Central California, it's like, how does that kid connect to those collaborators and understand, hey, I could do this in the future, because I feel like that story and that excitement is not being passed along to like anyone at this point, especially from on the Nike side. I know that like, kind of generally speaking, like all the brands probably will suffer a little bit if Nike suffers too, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, no, and it's that reminds me too, because like going back to like classroom, so I teach digital media, so I do like graphic design and photography, like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and Premiere. I teach my kids those things, and one of the projects that I do to kind of like the capstone to their like design unit is to have them design their own sneaker, like. And then these last few years, I've tried to emphasize with them, it's like, I don't want you to just like pick a shoe and just like put crazy colors on it just because you want to. Like, I want you to be intentional about why you design it. And then in that process, like introducing them to that project, I give them examples of like the Salehis, the J-Tips, and like all these good stories that are associated with a sneaker, and then explain to them like how that resonates with the consumer and will create this attachment to their emotion to a product just because of that story, because that story resonates here. The product might not, but the story hits for some people. Yeah. And so like when I share that with kids, it's like, it's cool to see like some of their, their gears turning and the light bulbs coming on, because then you see some of these kids sharing their stories in their lives or things that they enjoy on a sneaker. So they're sharing experiences visually on a design. And, I'm not saying I'm going to, save sneaker culture by any means by doing that to my kids, but like, I think it's cool it's a useful skill to see some of these kids be able to share something without saying something, right? Like they can display it artistically. And I feel like, the more that's done, even outside of sneakers, if that's done in, art classes or other education classes where kids are able to learn to express who they are and share who they are through a visual medium, hopefully, that can translate into sneakers and, and then just like, people like us in the older generation of sneakers, it's like, some of us are like, these younger kids, like, but it's like, no, like we can educate people. Yeah. Aaron does a great job of that with his content. He does a lot of educational stuff and, tries to help people understand the historical significance and impact of sneakers. And then so like understanding that, helping this younger generation, and then being able to, foster some creative skills with these kids instead of just digital skills. I think that could be something that could maybe be tapped into down the line in sneakers.
Yeah, absolutely. To piggyback off that, like I teach a couple of sections of marketing, and so one of my sections last year was on the Unheard Of brand, Grandma's Couch, and we read that press release in class. We went to the website, like. We read the whole story. We looked at the shoes, like we connected the story to the details on the shoe and talked about what made it such a successful product. And so I think doing stuff like that with them where they realize like, hey, this is art, right? Like this is not just like, some, I guess, can be where it's like $5 worth of material glued together and sold as a product, but a lot of times, like it's especially collaborations, are people waiting their whole lives to touch that, right? Like it's like a dream to get that call from a major brand and say, we want you to work on a shoe. And so those first releases have so much intention and detail behind them that it's incredible, right? And I know this was like Philip's like third shoe with Adidas, second or third shoe with Adidas, but because he got that opportunity, he spent it on something so intentional and close to him. And a lot of people related to that, right? Like I'm sure all of us had the ugly plastic on grandma's couches, like when, back in the day, and it was like a staple, right? And the ugly floral prints, now you go to thrift stores and you see those couches everywhere. Right?
I got one of those in my classroom right now.
Yeah. And so, but those are, and like you said, Nick, that's what's missing, is that tie between the major brands or like Nike and some of the youth, right? There's nothing that's really connecting them. And I think they acknowledge that and they try, right? Like I think Nike signed Kai Cenat to a deal. And I think he obviously has a huge amount of influence with the younger generation, but it's not like he doesn't. It's almost like when Adidas signed Beyonce, right? Like you don't see them as like sneaker people or like fashion people, right? Like he's a streamer that's very talented and funny and whatever, right? He's worked very hard to get where he's at, but there's nothing tying him back to sneakers and the community at large, or like you said, like Virgil the coacher, right? And so that's why nothing has taken off. So I don't know, man. I think kind of what Andy said, like trying to be more intentional with storytelling, maybe more grassroots efforts, like have Nike come and do community events, right, where they give out signature athlete shoes and they kind of bring that excitement back to these kids, right? And they have a huge, it's kind of like almost like a huge miss with the EYBL, right? They have this program for basketball that has all the top players in the country, and they get a bunch of free shoes, but then there's nothing beyond that, right? Like, right. And to be fair, like a lot of these kids who play top, they're already like very well off and have no reason to market for Nike, right? Like you look at some of these teams and you're like, you know, Carlos Boozer has his kids are top players. Obviously, Braun's kids, Carmelo Anthony's kid, like all these kids are coming from, you know, they had these.
Kobe sixes.
Exactly. You know, and the average kid can't afford that, right? Like a kid in my school can't play in some Kobe Grinches that are going for $600 in the aftermarket. So, yeah, they're definitely missing that tie. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe following Andy. Maybe Nike needs to give Andy a job. You know, maybe they create a consulting position for Andy. That'd be dope.
Let's go team teach with him there.
Yeah.
And train the kids. You know?
I mean,
it
is so important though, the storytelling aspect of it. I'm glad you both said that, because like I speak at one of the design schools out here pretty regularly to like footwear design students, and you know, like my story to them is like, look, I watched, you know, Back to the Future 2 and saw this like self-lacing shoe. Fast forward, you know, 30 years, and I had a podcast with Tiffany Beers, who made this shoe, and then I pull out a like Hirachi Adapt or an Adapt shoe, and I'm like, this shoe is a 40-year story. Like, plant the seeds and start telling the story now, and you don't know where it's going to come out. And I think that is like the stuff that we're all craving that too. You know, like I think it's like we're hyper focused on it too as sneaker consumers, because we're so lucky to be able to see so many creative people do something that they love in this space. You know, like there are so few people that get to do something that tells their story, and you know, it's so rare that like it can become a product that's tangible and like passed through millions of people anywhere outside of sneakers. You know, like you just don't have it. You know, like I get that, like, you know, maybe streetwear and, you know, somewhat, you know, connected things, but it's so rare. And I think with sneakers, it's like a great example of how it should work, but it's also like we're all like, I think, craving realer connections, because we're seeing all the like fast scroll stuff that just doesn't matter to us. So when the meaningful thing pops up and like we catch it, it's like even that much more cool to us on the consumer side. That like, but I feel like we're, you know, missing that. You know, to your point, Kai Cenata's obviously like done a ton of work to get to where he is, but like the moments are not like they never feel personal. It's more of like a loud excitement bang versus a like meaningful, you know, I don't know how to put that into words right now, but like,
no,
yeah.
No, I kind of know what you mean. And, you know, it made me think like a lot of these, you know, ties that we had as kids, like, you know, as kids, that's when your core memories are like, you know, develop. So like, you know, like you said, the Air Mags, like in Back to the Future, like core memory as a kid, like that gets you. It's like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then you see like in the Adapt, it's like, boom, like hits you, like connect, grab. And I think a lot of in today's world is like a lot of kids' experiences with sneakers and, you know, these people, it's you know, on their phone. Yeah. It's on social media. It's not these in-person experiences, like what Aaron was saying, like grassroots stuff, like sneaker releases. Majority of them are online. Like we don't see a lot of people like going and lining up. I mean, you have really good activations for some of these collaborations where they'll like. I went out to Cincinnati for Unheard Ofs with the Grandma's Couch and got to meet Phil and see that whole thing, and that was awesome. Because like he had a venue, he had like the whole thing set up. He had his grandma there. You could meet his grandma, and and then he was selling the shoes there too with everything else, and it was beautiful. I mean, and that experience wasn't something that like you see on a phone and get like 5 seconds of stimulation out of, and then you keep scrolling. Like that's an experience that you're there, you're immersed, your senses are like, you're seeing things, you're hearing things, you're smelling things, you're experiencing all sorts of things other than just like seeing it. And I feel like those kinds of experiences, if those can be fostered more with releases, I feel like that can be a key to sustaining what we love in sneakers and like carrying that forward to future generations of people.
Yeah. Very well said. So I've already had you guys on for an hour, and I could keep going for a couple of more. But we usually do a segment called Rockin' and Coppin', where we talk about something we've worn recently and maybe something we either just picked up or we're looking at picking up. So Rockin' and Coppin' this week for me, it's kind of an old school New Balance 998. This is a shoe that, I've had this for a really long time. I don't know if the date is on here, but I don't see it, but yeah, I can't remember the exact colorways, but it was just like the gray blue or the gray GB. What is it? 998 GB, gray and brown, I guess. But super comfy shoe. I'm sure you guys have similar New Balances. The shoe that I've been looking at potentially copying, that 808 Roland Tiago New Balance skate shoe. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's like
the 480s.
Yeah, and it's like the collab between Roland and like it's like that shoe.
Is it the tan one?
Yeah, it's like the kind of a darker.
It's like a light tan.
It's a darker one,
or maybe it's
I think.
Okay.
It's got like tan and orange on the tongue and on the like collar of it.
That's right. Yeah, I saw those because I picked up the Jeremy Fish 303 boards.
Yeah, that's a great one. I love those.
480 from earlier this year, and it's beautiful. And then I saw those Rollins ones, and I was like, or maybe it was the Reynolds ones. I can't remember. But they were like, I was like, oh, man, like New Balance is about to like keep me from stopping buying SBs. Like I'm going to go get some new bags.
Yep.
All right, you guys ready? I got 4 boxes.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, boy.
Okay. All right.
But okay, so this shoe was special to me. I mean, you're from the Bay Area, so this you're wearing the colors right now. But I am looking for the orange pair and the pink pair. But I think just everything that this shoe represented, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, rest in peace, Keith Huffnagel. Getting these back, the rollout on these was the best.
It was
so cool. Yeah,
Like getting the Nike. The Huff Talk, and I think this is like, all right, this is like my back in my days moment, but like, I think of how much these were sitting, and I'm like, guys, you don't even realize like what these shoes meant, like how hard people hunted to get a pair of these, and now they're just sitting there, and I was so tempted to double up, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna buy them up because it'll be another 20 years before we get these again, and it's like, dude, like these, when I saw them sitting, I'm like, come on, guys, like you don't realize you're missing out on this gem of a shoe that we wanted to come back so much.
Yep.
So anyway, so those, I'm on the lookout for the orange and pink pairs. Dude, these next two, I'm just like the biggest fan of. Like, if Nike is watching this, send me all of them. But like the P6000, like I think especially as like educators, right? Like we're on our feet all day and we're walking around and we're interacting with kids. And I think, in my opinion, like I think the 1906R is the best like mesh runner, like looks wise. Like it just, I feel like that's a good shoe, but I would put these like second, like just the different details in them, you know, and they're so comfy and they're affordable, you know, like that's the thing, like you don't have to break the bank to get these, which I feel like, you know, New Balance could get kind of pricey sometimes, even though now, you know, with everything else kind of dying down. And then the big brother, you know, I've been rocking these heavy. I still wear some other stuff, but like, man, it's hard to beat comfort. And I think I'm at that point in my collection where I'm like, you know, I think maybe why New Balance is so good now, because people are realizing they're both aesthetically pleasing and and comfortable.
Absolutely.
And I'm just like, man, I don't want to compromise comfort anymore, right? Like I'm not like back in the day, you know, you take the insole out so that you could fit in a size smaller, right? Or like, you know, you'd wear it with no sole and squeeze your pinky toe just to get the fit right, you know, or like, man, I want to wear those 4s today, and so I'm gonna sacrifice my pinky toe. Now it's like we don't have to do that, so I'm not gonna do that, you know.
That's so funny.
The P6000 an interesting one too, because it was like the retro inspired, right? They obviously wanted it to look a certain way. It's a new model, but I'm so glad that they didn't make it crazy expensive, because it's just one of those shoes. It's like, you know, you can probably get it on sale for $70 or $80 in certain colors, and like it's a like you said, it's super comfortable. I wish there was more of those like really thought out shoes, especially from Nike. You know, like I expect like the best from them, I guess. So it's like you could do that with so many different, you know, models and styles, and make affordable shoes that are still really cool looking, in my opinion.
Yes.
Well, back to what AD was saying, right? Like you have to prioritize sneakers, and for someone that likes sneakers, you're like, dude, do I buy 2 pairs of shoes at, you know, for $500 this week, or do I pay my mortgage, right? Where it's like when you buy these, it's like, shoot, I don't feel bad like buying a $70 pair of shoes, or like, you know, like just on SNS the other day, I saw the Pegasus 2K5 and they were like on sale for like $70. And I'm like, dude, I don't even feel bad buying this, because I'm like, $70 is so reasonable. But then you're like, shoot, the new 4s are coming out, and Nike just keeps upping the price, which I'm happy for the Nigels tomorrow that are going to be like $160, right? I'm like, all right, that's a fair price point for a collaboration. But yeah, they're almost outpricing their consumer, right? Where it's like, dude, if you want a new pair of Jordans, you have to pay $250 after shipping and taxes to get them. And you're like, man, if you that just two pairs of shoes is a car payment, right? Like, am I really gonna sacrifice my car note this month for 2 pairs of Jordans
the rest of the month?
Well, not to mention that, like, if you can get 3 pairs of $70 shoes that are really dope shoes, most of us are going with those 3 over one, you know, like, even though we probably have the nostalgia driving us for the 200 plus pair, you know, but yeah, I don't know. All right. What do you got, AD?
So here, Aaron reminded me of one that I forgot, so I'm gonna grab it real quick. It's right here. But, we were talking about, like, I got these maybe a month ago, and it wasn't until like a few weeks ago that I wore them. And this is, you know, one of those on sale pairs that I've been eyeing for a minute, and like, so the Bodega, you know, Grid Hurricane Sauconys, I love these.
Such a good shoe.
I mean, seeing them online, completely different experience than seeing them in person. And just like the quality of these things, and for the price point, like I picked these up for, I think it was like $68 or something, like shipped. So I was like, that's a no-brainer for something that's like that. And especially because, you know, I mean, Bodega does a good job on their collaborations. Like they do a good job with materials, colors, all that stuff. So yeah, that one, I was happy to get that a month or so ago. But my most recent one that I unboxed and that like I saw and very happy with are the Medusa 1906s from Action Bronson. If I remember right, he did these ones as a raffle, right? Like these were the EQL.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
the equal raffle. So yeah, that one I was fortunate to hit on for that. And then I got the Rose Waters. So now I'm just like,
nice.
Do I buy the Scorpius pair? Like that one for resale, that one's stupid money. It's like
think it's like $750 in my size. So I was like, eesh,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can bring myself to doing that. So like, I'm just gonna enjoy these for now.
Yeah, that's how you got to do it, man. I have so many friends where we've had that conversation where it's like, I didn't buy any of the Huff ones, and I'm wearing a Keith Forever shirt, like, so I should buy them all, but it's one of those things where like if I buy one, I have to buy all three, and I'm willing to spend $100 and grab a pair that they're on discount in places, and I'm just like, what is wrong with it? But beside my personal feelings about that, it's like, okay, if I have to hunt, I wear a 13 too, so like it's a little bit harder to find the pink ones were gone before I could even blink. So I'm assuming that the price of those on any resale platform is way out of what I want to spend. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just not even going to look at this for as long as I can. Eventually I'll have to buy them because it's just like one of my favorite. I mean, I used to go line up at Huff, like in San Francisco. So it's like it's too personal for me to not go get it. But it's one of those, it's definitely a sneakerhead thing where it's like, once you get one of like a pack or a collaborator where it's like they've done like similar things, you just feel like, oh man, now I got to get that second one. All right, guys. Well, go ahead.
Oh no, I think too, like, I think we recognize now too that like everything comes back around, and like I was telling AD Sneaks once, like the De La Soul SB Dunks were at the outlets for $65. Like my Nike outlet here in Vegas, and me and my cousin were like, oh, maybe we should pick up a pair just to have them. We're like, we'll get them later. And then look at those now, like they're selling for like $500-$600, and I'm like, man, if I would have had the foresight to be like, look, let me pick up 10 pairs at $65, I could sail off into the sunset. But I think this is why we appreciate times like now, where it's like we can add these little pieces to our collection that are meaningful, like those Bodega Sauconys, and not have to break the bank for it. Or like the orange pair of the Huffs, I think they're going for under retail on like Go and stuff like that. So now those pieces that are meaningful to us, we can grab them and not feel guilty or not have to, break the bank to do it. And so we understand that, right? I think a lot of people that are newer and were so invested when the money was so good in it that they were, reselling everything for plenty of money, that they're like, oh man, like this is scary. Where we realize like, there was a while where you could buy those De La Soul Dunks at the outlets or other Jordans at the outlets for less than $100, and it's just the way the market was. And so I don't get too high or too low anymore about sneakers, because I realize like there's always another shoe I want. There's always another shoe I'm gonna need for the collection, and so it'll come when it comes.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I've been meaning to wear these for quite a while, just a general release of the grids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like also this kind of, I'm really excited about the diversification of people's collections at this point, where, this is a $50. I mean, probably if I bought it at 50, it's probably 30 somewhere now, because it's just a general release. Right. Nobody really cares about it. But 5 to 10 years from now, when I dig it out again, I'm going to be like, oh man, this was such a cool colorway. And you're going to be like, oh man, that was a great colorway. I got the Bodegas, and you're going to pull yours out. And I feel like we're at this point where that's so broad that like 5 or 10 years from now, the people that care about this are just going to be like living life. Cause it's just like, oh man, I paid $40 for that. I paid $80 for Huff Air Max 1s. And like, so like, it's hard for me to like be negative about this stuff right now, because there's just so much good stuff out there. It's like,
facts.
Guys, I traded a pair of True Religion jeans that I bought at Ross for a pair of Raging Bull 5s back in like 2011, 2010, when True Religion jeans were like the thing, right?
I remember that.
I went to Ross, and there was like a pair there for like $30, and I was like, all right. And I remember texting this guy, and I was like, and he was like, you got anything for trade? And I was like, oh, I got these True Religion jeans. He's like, what size? They were his size. He's like, yeah, I'll trade you for these, 5s. And it's like, So
Oh,
I just
dude.
went over there with him. He tried them on. He liked them. I'm like, those are the stories that are going to come out, like you said, out of this time where you look back and you're like, dude, this guy was really like trade the Raging Bull 5s for a pair of jeans that I bought at Ross. I mean, he didn't know I bought him at Ross, but
Yeah,
that's so funny.
I got
That's so
some 5s
cool.
out of it.
That's so good.
Oh man. Well, all right, guys, I've had you for an hour and 20 minutes now. I'm obviously, could go on, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime soon. This was a really great conversation. And I'm thankful that you guys were able to make the time for me. But most importantly, make sure that you let everybody know how they can find you outside of the show.
Sure. Find me on Instagram, AD Sneaks.
And Instagram front page,
Cool.
Aaron.
We'll put links to both these guys' Instagram pages, and just again appreciate you guys taking the time and looking forward to more content from you, and educating the next generation, I guess, too, on all these sneaker things that we love. So thanks everybody for watching, listening, tuning in. Make sure you leave us a review if you haven't already. We'd definitely appreciate that, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.